Hey everyone, it's Terrence Branley with the Grow IT Podcast, and today I have my friend Joe Milnes from the direct sales company. And Joe is I've got a sales marketing background going long and deep, but Joe is my favorite because he teaches me new things all the time. So Joe, welcome. Let's dive into it.
Hi Terrence, good to be here. Good to be chatting with you again.
Likewise. So you hear sales enablement, you hear all, lead generation, all these different things. Tell me about some of the clients that you have and where they start from, right? Because, and we have probably similar instances, but, some will start from scratch where they have nothing, where they've been leader, founder, executive, run, and that person is the sales champion and they don't have anything. A lot of them don't even have, we've encountered that don't have, even so much as a brochure. Like they're really proud when they're like, hey, we just got brochures and we're going to a conference and we just have a new website, right? To maybe others along the spectrum that may have hired account executives or even have sales teams that they're looking to maybe even just, feed leads into on a more consistent basis. I'm sure it spans the gamut. So maybe I'm just going to toss that out to you and kind of talk about the different types of clients you have and what they're starting with. Can you hear me, Joe? What happened? Same. All right. Yeah, no kidding. I wonder what it is. I couldn't tell if Joe couldn't hear me. Yeah, but that shouldn't. Maybe. And Joe knows Riverside because I know I've talked to him about it. So.
Hey, sorry.
They're okay.
You just
What
cut
happened?
out. Yeah. I don't know. You just froze.
That's weird. So, and part of it with Riverside, could you still hear me though?
No.
Oh, that's weird. That's the first time it happened. And normally, like it'll record on both sides. That's kind of one of the benefits. You know that, right? I mean, it records locally, so it's like great for that. But at any rate, so all that will be on the intro. Did you hear what I was asking you?
So no, I heard most of it, but I know you asked. It was a really long question as well. But
well, you know me, right? Like I turn like a quick question into a long-winded one. So. So again, it's probably the same, right? So I'm going to have him edit that. You just take it from here. And basically it's the same question that we started with in the beginning.
Which is who's the
like
target market?
Yeah. And really the whole gamut in terms of like what I was saying in that long-winded, diatribe is that, hey, like we have, prospects and clients have nothing other than, hey, we just got brochures and a new website. We're super excited, right? To others that may have tried and failed with account executives, to others that may say, hey, we've got 2 or 3, we've got a inside sales team that we need more lead flow or whatever it may be, right? So it's really just a matter of, hey, give us kind of the entire gamut from those that have what you'd consider to be nothing, that are founder, owner, executive led, that are kind of hit that ceiling and are like, oh, where do we start, right? And from our standpoint, all of our prospects and clients are ones that are so used to word of mouth referral and networking, so inbound, right? That they're like, whoa, what do you mean marketing? Like, where do I start? I have nothing, compared to probably all the way along the spectrum that you've helped with. So maybe if you can kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, okay. So Our expertise, or my experience, has been with building and optimizing B2B sales teams. And that really has covered the whole spectrum. So some of the clients, when we'd first started the direct sales company, were very much founder led. They'd proven their services, they got product market fit, they got happy customers, and they were wanting to expand that operation and remove the reliance from word of mouth and networking, which is an albatross that so many founders like wear across around their neck. And then right up to my experience in a £100 million technology reseller here in the UK, where I was responsible for training and building their graduate sales team. And that was a team of graduates solely doing outbound, all on cold calling. And they went from like zero, from scratch, to £1 million a month revenue in less than a year, purely cold calling. So I've done it all. I really enjoy the process of defining what it is to sell in that particular niche or for that particular company, being able to systemize that, because obviously, as you well know, most sound founders sell on conviction and being really good at what they do, and that comes across and does a lot of the selling for you. So be able to extract that, define it into a process that someone else can follow without that founder-led conviction or knowledge in a lot of cases, and then putting that next stage into training so people can come in outside of the organization, get it, ramp up, and then start to generate revenue. So full cycle sales process, design, implementation, training is where we operate in the general.
So let's talk about the and I think that, and we're in a market that's B2B services as well, in terms of that's the type of clients that we help out. But I think it it lends itself to there's many businesses out there that have founder led, right? They're the sales arm of their organization, right? And to your point, it's a great point, right? They sell with conviction, right? To the point to where you're like, that guy knows what he's. I'm going to bet that guy is going to get me. That guy or gal is going to get me to where I want to go, right? Yeah. And so then that challenge becomes, as you mentioned, which is, okay, hey, and we've experienced this where we've have clients that they said, hey, I've hired a couple of sales guys. I've gave them a slap on the butt and said, go get it, right? Or here's a phone book and an attack, right? But that's you can't expect that out of a salesperson. That's not fair. And B, it's fraught for failure every single time. Yeah. And so the question then becomes is, hey, how do I, as you mentioned, and a founder says, how do I download what I have up in here? All this IP experience, all of that, right? And how do I download that and put that into a system to where I can hire salespeople and give them an opportunity to be successful? How do you do that?
Okay. So we've split it up into 4 pillars of outbound success. So we treat them all individually and we treat them one after another. So you have to unlock the first level before you go on to the next. And so what I will take you through today is each of those 4 pillars, and I'll explain what needs to happen at each stage and also the biggest mistakes, partly so that your listeners can avoid making them, partly because it makes for good content, the biggest mistakes that people make and the horror stories that we've experienced at each stage of those when it's gone wrong.
Yes, great.
And the 4 pillars are process. So like you're saying, sales process, extracting that knowledge from the founder, knowing what it is and knowing what customer stages need to go through. The people. So once you've got the process, you need the right people to follow it. Then need the training, because it doesn't matter how good they are or what attributes someone has got, they have to be able to follow that process. Otherwise, it's a moot point. And then finally is the tools and the technology. So especially if you've got, like, I know you deal with a lot of IT and cybersecurity consultants, the total addressable market is massive. If you aren't using technology effectively or relying on partners that can use it effectively, then you're missing out on so much that it makes it very difficult to reach your full potential, because you're just not able to work as efficiently as this current market requires you. And the analogy I like to use is, if you think about a fine dining kitchen. So your process is your recipes. You have to be able to map out what the menu looks like from a top level, but also have specific steps that people follow on that lower level. Then you have the people, which are the chefs and the people that you bring into the brigade. How complex your recipes are is then dictates how skilled you need those chefs to be in order to follow that. Then the training, which you need to be able to take those chefs who've come in, who've not got familiarity with the dishes, and walk them through step by step so you know what to do. Again, the better your training is and the more long-term your vision in a training, your tolerance for time extends, it gives you a better chance of being able to get cheaper, hungrier talent that don't come with their own baggage, and mold them to your way of doing things, which is like the holy grail. And then the tools and the technology is the kitchen equipment and the technology around, which really should be the icing on the cake. And contrary to what you see a lot of VC-backed SaaS companies do, where it seems to be the first thing that the investor shed load of money into, the technology and the tools like that you give your sales team absolutely should be the icing on the cake. What you need to be able to do as a caveat to that, though, is if you've got a large target market, you have to be able to open up conversations with as many of those as you can at any particular point. And you're only going to be able to do that with targeting and use of technology.
Man, there's a lot there. First of all, I'm probably going to steal that analogy. That's probably one of the best I've seen in terms of the complexity of the recipes and the kitchen and the chefs. That's a good one. It's a good image. Let me ask you this. In terms of that process, right? So it starts with the founder, right? And you're having the conversations with the founder. Is it complex in terms of saying, hey, we're going to go try and find someone like you? Or is it more important to download the sales, that process that he or she goes through, what's important in it, and then taking it as a completely separate approach to then go, okay, how are we going to leverage, let's call it, the information that we've gained in terms of the ICPs? How are we going to pair an offer to those ICPs? How are we going to go out to the market, right? And then, 3 or 4 steps down that line, in that pillar, maybe that's what I want to get clarification from you.
Yeah.
Are you then going out to hire salespeople and say, hey, it may not look that these salespeople may not look like you, right? They're going to fit right into this process, but they may not look and feel like you. Is that the case? Or maybe talk a little bit about that, because I think that's the big struggle that most founders, execs go through.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest mistakes that founders make is that they are looking for a replacement to them. So you'll have heard this story a million times, because I know I've heard it, and it's something all too common, is that founders, when they take their first foray into sales, like building a sales team, they think, well, I'll invest in someone who's experienced because I want them to be able to take full circle and service the clients. So they take, I don't know what it might be, $80,000 to $100,000. I'm thinking it might, but they'll spend a good whack on one salesperson that could have probably funded 2 junior salespeople, and they'll go all in thinking that because they're paying for experience, that they're going to come into the organization, pick up what they've already done with their years and years of building this product and the emotional attachments and conviction that they have with that, and it's just going to work out. But it never does, because even when you get experience, it's still a coin flip as to whether a salesperson works out or not. It's nearly always a coin flip whether a salesperson will leave in the first year. So if you've just got all your eggs in one basket, one, your expectations are going to be unrealistic, because you're going to expect them to just come in, like you say, give them a tap on the butt, and then like off you go. Where's my revenue? Like, just expecting that. The expectations are unrealistic. And the chances are that they are going to, like this coin flip, where they're going to leave. If you have one salesperson and you're reliant on their sales process, When that salesperson leaves, you have no process. So you're no further along than when you are previously. You've got no assets within the business. You haven't downloaded any information. And then you've got to go through the whole ugly scenario again, but you're a little bit more battle weary. So the thought of taking on someone with less experience and maybe two at the same time just fills you with dread, and they just get stuck into a circle. And I know you. Can you hear me?
There you go. Headset, Joe Milnes recording. I don't know. The same thing happened. Kind of lost.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Did anything
Oh,
happen?
you can hear me now? Yeah, I stood on the plug.
Due to a change in their devices. It says started a new recording for Joe due to a change in their devices.
There you go. Is that can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, can you see me?
I can just see you. It's frozen. It's probably doing what it did earlier with me.
Right. It is moving now. It's moving. I stood on the wire and unplugged all my screens. I'd love to say it was. I was getting animated. I like talking about it.
So that's when I lost it. That's when I lost you. You kind of like took a step back and threw up your arms. And it went south. That's okay. We're editing this one out. This baby's going to be edited to bits.
There we go. See if it works. Am I back now?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, perfect.
That wasn't bad. 2-minute break. All right, so.
Yeah. So I was saying, I know you're laughing because you'll have heard that story so many times. So, yes. And it's something that drives founders mad. So that's why the process is the first thing. You have to download that IP, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You aren't going to get people that are 95 or 99% of the founder. You don't need that to be successful and to be scalable. Just go to you just need someone who can follow 70 and 75%. And
I totally agree.
You can even go as far as to say you don't need someone who's going to fully service the clients from start to close initially. You could just look to someone and say, okay, well, I'm just looking for someone who's got the right attributes and can get a customer 70% of the way down the funnel. And then I can take it as a founder. I've still got a lot more free time. And then as they gain more experience, that's a much more risk-averse way of looking at it. But the process... Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
And I was going to say, so the process and that downloading of that IP, you just have to look at it as a macro level and a micro level. So macro level, how the menu looks. So it's the specific stages that a customer would need to go to get to their point of sale. So if it's cybersecurity, it would be something along the lines of they need to an initial meeting. There will probably be like a technical discovery or demo to formulate a scope of works before a proposal being submitted, which ticks all the boxes that they've gleaned, and then proposal through to close. Four very basic stages where certain things happen and you want certain things from the customer at each point of those. The next is the micro level, which is a little bit trickier, especially if you're not familiar with it, which is defining what information you need and what questions should be asked at each stage to guarantee the chances of the biggest chance of a successful prospect moving to that next stage, or being able to draw a line in the sand and say, if I don't get this amount of information, if I don't get these metrics, if they don't let me have an eye on their infrastructure, if they're not going to trust me this amount, then I'm going to draw a line and I'm not going to submit a proposal for that, which sounds harsh, but that's what an effective sales process is. It's disqualifying people that aren't a good fit or aren't willing to trust you or are going to tap you for free consultancy but then leading with value with the ones that are interested in building a long-term relationship and are interested in what you have to offer.
I think the biggest challenge that you kind of mentioned there is that, and again, a lot of our clients have, as you mentioned earlier, they've done a great job with their firms. They've grown it internally by word of mouth referrals and networking, which is great, man. That means they're doing good things for their clients and their customers. But the inbound versus outbound model are completely different, right? And I think that's the struggle that a lot of founders kind of go through is understanding how do we do that, right? Because and a network referral, right, is going to be completely different coming in the door than an outbound outreach, cold outreach to potential prospect, right? And maybe if you can talk a little bit about the challenge there, both in terms of mindset and the infrastructure that you need to put in place in order to be successful with the outbound.
Yeah, and I think the first thing to point out is that often this is another big shock that founders have is when they've gone from having a business and building a successful business based on doing a good job and someone else telling other people that they've done a good job and they come in. When they then start to go out to outbound and they get to speak to prospects who aren't particularly qualified, aren't really sure if they need the service or product that they provide, it's a massive shock because a competent inbound close rate is something along the lines of 50 to 60%. Whereas outbound, you're going to be down more like 20, 25%, probably could be even less if it's a longer sales cycle, if it's more involved like cybersecurity, where there's going to have to be an element of trust that is built up before the prospect pushes the button. So that's the first obstacle to overcome, is to separate those and deal with them entirely differently. The perceived likelihood of success when you're going out and tapping someone on the shoulder in outbound is a lot lower than if someone said, hey, Terrence has done a really good job over here. I know they're absolutely smashing it for us in terms of demand generation, and that engine is really firing on all cylinders. When you speak to that prospect, they already know that you're doing a good job. Whereas if you've tapped someone on the shoulder, they've got no idea, and they are probably on the side of more distrusting. It's up to you to build that perceived likelihood of success, which is so important. And that's where case studies and collecting them in the right way, documenting customer success, being able to present that in a way becomes really important, because you need something and you need assets to bridge the gap between inbound and outbound. Inbound, where the perceived likelihood of success is up here, outbound where it's down here. You have to bridge that with assets and a coherent process. Credibility will be built by the process, but then also you do need assets to build it as well.
Yeah, we talk about one of my favorite authors, and I actually have the pleasure of having him on the podcast later this month, is Daniel Priestley, who wrote a book called Oversubscribed, and he talks about how to overcome that lack of trust when you go out to the market and, like to your point, tap someone on the shoulder or prospect on the shoulder, right? They don't know you from Adam, right? And you've got to be able to build, Daniel likes to call it 7 hours of trust, right? And you can do that through case studies and content and whatnot. Which is so critical, right? Because when you talk about, the inbound versus the outbound, and the inbound, is someone giving a warm referral or a network referral, that's going to be inherent, right? They're already going to automatically, you're starting at a different point than you are from the cold outreach, right? What are some, let me ask this, what is the timeline? Because I think that's the other, when we talked about earlier, that a lot of, and I failed at this back in my early career with hiring a salespeople for one of my early businesses, right? The same thing, right? Old hair, hey, go charge, go get them, right? Put a phone book on their desk and be like, there's got to be some good leads in there somewhere, right? And so what is a good timeline in order to, everything comes down to time and money. So what is the timeline in order to put in that baseline infrastructure that they're going to need in order to be successful, right? And what is the cost, and maybe even opportunity cost, if they choose not to go down that path and to just, try and hire a salesperson or multiple salespeople or an experienced salesperson, what are the the hard and opportunity costs associated there?
Yeah, so it is insanely difficult. And when I say insanely difficult, I've never come across a founder that has done it. So I'm going to caveat this. I've never come across a non-sales based founder who's done this. So product based or technical based, like founders, it's very, very difficult for them to escape from that founder-led model without first looking at the process and getting the infrastructure in place and looking at it over a period of 6 to 12 months. Because what will happen is you're always reliant on the assets, the know-how, the little black book that a salesperson promises, the process that they might bring in. You're always reliant on, the business is always reliant on that coming in, almost like a consultant. So in terms of building anything for your business and retaining assets, IP, process, everything like that within the business, it always lives and dies by the salespeople that happen to be in the seat at the time. And because of the attrition that you will experience, because the other thing is that when you haven't got the training, the process, etc., the assets to offer the salespeople, your attrition is going to be higher. So you're constantly in this cycle. So it has to be a fact of looking at it over long term. You're not just going to, you may drop insanely lucky, but great salespeople aren't normally looking for jobs. That's the problem. So you have to be able
Yes.
to get them to come in and give them a helping hand. The more assets you've got within the business. So if someone's got warm leads, discovery calls being booked for them on a regular basis, if they have case studies being produced that they can help to use in their outreach or increase credibility, all of these things really help not only to ramp your salespeople up, but also to retain them over a longer period of time. And also you're retaining these assets within your business. So you are developing assets that are going to stand with you, regardless of whether a salesperson leaves or stays. We've just had one of our founders that we were working with. We'd employed 2 sales reps, put 8 months into training them. They'd done really well, starting to generate opportunities. Everything was going away, and one of them has left. Now, in the scenario where they put all their eggs in one basket, at this point, they are left with absolutely nothing. No IP,
Yes.
no process, nothing like
Yep.
that. As it is, one, they've got a salesperson who's got bandwidth and ready to go and can pick up exactly where the other salesperson left off. The other that is all the assets and the meetings, the split testing of which campaigns are working best, everything like that resides within that business. So the next person that comes in is going to have a much easier ride and can ramp up much quicker. And that's only because they've spent effort in getting that IP, documenting a process, and then picking the right people, which is the next pillar, to come in and they know where to draw the line in terms of experience versus attributes to get them to scale up as quickly as they can.
So I just had, I'm laughing because I just had this conversation with one of our clients who had, hired a senior salesperson, and this is going to be a good transition for you into talking about
Yeah,
the people side. Who had hired a seasoned salesperson, and in the IT world and technology, those people are not cheap. Good
no,
salespeople are expensive, right? Both from from a business owner standpoint, it's not only the salary, it's the time, energy, health benefits, taxes, et cetera, that's associated with bringing on that person. And at the end of it, this client had them on for, I believe it was like 9 months, right? And at the end of it, to your point, had nothing, right? Not a
yeah,
single potential deal that was even in the pipeline. And and I said to him, listen, I from a sales standpoint, I can argue both sides of the coin. Hey, salespeople are lazy, but at the same time, as a salesperson, I want to come in and understand that you have a process that's going to help me get success faster. Because as a salesperson, we're largely based on our compensation is largely based on the deals that we close. And if you don't have a process as a business owner in place in order to get me there faster and help me be successful, then like you said, good salespeople, there's plenty of opportunities, right? So where does the people side come into it in terms of now, once you have a process that you kind of baseline infrastructure, I like to call it, in place, and you have a process, then what kind of people do you mentioned earlier, some maybe looking to hire some junior folks, but talk to me a little bit about, what the process looks like for hiring the people side then.
Yeah. So this is where it's I can give guidance, but it really comes down to like experience at this point, because the more coherent and easy to follow your process and the better that your training is, the further towards, say, graduate, wet between the ears, like evergreen, brand new, just out of college salesperson, the closer you can draw the line in terms to a lower basic, higher upside, you can draw that. So the more effort you put into that as a business, the lower you can draw that line. I wouldn't recommend for anyone going into their first foray as sales if they aren't an expert. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it for anyone. It is difficult. I think you're always better drawing the line where someone's got experience in a specific area that is relevant to you. So you're hiring for the attributes, but as long as you've got a good process, then you don't have to look for someone that's got decades of experience and can talk with that amount of IP or conviction to prospects. You can still be the thought leader as the founder, and that's still an important part of you to do. But what you can do is look for people who've either sold into the same departments as you are selling into. So it doesn't have to be, if you're selling like a complex cybersecurity solution, you don't need someone who's sold complex cybersecurity solutions, but having someone who's sold into IT teams would be of benefit. Similarly, someone who has sold complex solutions or a similar type of sale, but not necessarily in IT, is also worth considering. But regardless of who you get to in experience, you also want to test that interview for growth mindset, resilience, coachability, and drivers, like beneath the surface drivers. You don't want people who just say, oh, yeah, kind of want to do sales because, yeah, you want people who have a deep desire to succeed. So
High drive.
Look for people who've done high drive, competitive sports, anything like that, where they have demonstrated that they want to achieve. Or when talking to an interview, you don't just get a sense that they're saying, oh, I want to earn money. You can see that conviction in them, and they're like, I am going to earn money. I will move through walls to get my commission check. So again, and this is something that a lot of founders find difficult, is you have to push and test for those attributes in interview. And the best way to test that is to get them to do the thing that they will be doing on the interview. So for us, anyone coming into the direct sales company, we will get our SDRs to do a cold call. We'll give them a script, because if you can't sound good doing this cold call script to me, then you aren't going to sound good when you've learnt the cold call script and you're doing it to someone else. If someone's doing an enterprise account executive role, then we will absolutely make sure that they can conduct a decent discovery call and go and ask beneath the surface questions to really probe into customers and prospects' needs. So we will test what they're going to be doing in their role in that interview, but then also look for ask questions to check that they've got a growth mindset, like I say, resilience, accountability is another one, so that you've got the right attributes as well as the relevant experience. And that's where you can reduce the percentage chance of things going south significantly by making sure you've got the right person for that process.
The other thing it does too, in putting that baseline, I always like to call it like the baseline marketing infrastructure. The other thing it does is allows you to build up KPIs that you can use to kind of create a success dashboard that you understand much faster, whether you need to qualify a salesperson in or out, right? Because you have a baseline. You've probably hired, let's at least call it a couple of folks, right? And held them to this same process and structure and said, okay, we know, right, that if you follow this methodology, that you're going to get 50% that will actually be qualified prospects, and of those, you will close, 20 to 25%, whatever it may be, right? But you have this baseline to where you can then hold, the new people after they've been, trained and brought through your training, portal, to where you now say, hey, great, now we have this baseline that we can hold you to, and you can find out whether someone is going to work in terms of a salesperson or they're not going to work, and in a much faster time frame than if you don't have that infrastructure in place and you have that salesperson, which is what salespeople do sometimes, is make excuses, right? Which is, oh, hey, I
Yeah,
sent out 500 emails, and hey, I've got a deal that's coming, and whatnot, right?
definitely. We've had a client recently and they had a salesperson who, to put it nicely, just wasn't cut out for that type of sale. And we were putting a huge amount of leads through. The lead generation engine was rocking. There was plenty of calls, but the quality of the discovery was really, really poor. And we had a fairly frank and upfront conversation with the client, and he was saying the lead quality is not getting us what we want, it's not working. And we had to say, look, the right information is not being extracted from these calls. And because we put work into the process, it was very easy for us to say, look, this information has to be got from these calls to determine whether it's an opportunity or not. It hasn't been got. Therefore, if you haven't got the right information, you can't qualify that prospect in and you can't qualify it out. He shouldn't be coming to you as a founder asking for you to allocate technical resource to put a proposal together because you don't know whether it's an opportunity, which is going to be another frustration. Similarly, there's going to be opportunities that are there that aren't being visited. And it didn't work out with that salesperson. We brought another salesperson in. They've gone round back over the old discovery calls and they've got 10 opportunities that were just going to be left out of the same and revisited as well. Yeah. So you will get people dropping off. But it just goes to show that a lot of it is in the discovery. But if we didn't have a process and we didn't have a way to measure adherence to the process at each part, there was no way that we could have documented that. And it'd probably be us that had got the boot as opposed to the salesperson. And the business would have been a lot worse the four of it. So it was an uncomfortable conversation at the time, but now like the green shoots are showing and it's in a much better place. But it's only because the effort was into putting that KPI and knowing what good looks like, knowing what the recipe is, so you can tell whether they've cooked the recipe as it needs to be cooked.
Yep. So I have a question for you. You mentioned earlier, about enterprise, right? Enterprise level of clients, and one of the comments or the questions I get from both prospects and clients. Some clients that want to move up from, let's call it a mid-market to enterprise level clients. And they say, we've not been able to crack the enterprise, code. We can't get to those people. Right. What would you say in terms of both approach or the system, that you kind of put in place? Does it need to differ from a mid-market type of prospect to an enterprise level prospect?
So the thing to consider when you're shifting from SMEs to mid-market to enterprise is that generally, and there's always going to be exceptions to this, but generally as a rule of thumb, the sales cycle is going to get slightly longer because there's going to be more stakeholders involved in that sign-off. Also, because IT is such a high visibility topic and subject within organizations, especially enterprise organizations, like cybersecurity, securing that integrity of supply chain, everything like that becomes more and more valuable the higher up you go and the more you go to enterprise. So whilst the process shouldn't differ, there's going to be extra steps and you have to be conscious of other stakeholders. And again, that's where the process is even more important. You can't just tip up to a 3,000 user company and say, do you want some consultancy or something like that? Because they're just not going to, the likelihood is that they've got a procurement chain. They're probably going to want things like ISO 27001 and things like that. So that there's going to be additional security considerations, hoops you have to jump through, and stakeholders that will want an eye on the sign off. So absolutely, the process shouldn't really differ, but there is going to be more steps, and it's going to be a more complicated sales cycle, and therefore the skills and experience of the sales people delivering it will need to be higher as well. And so my advice is to always balance the people on your prospect book and split them up into different types of prospects. So you want whales, you want dolphins, and you want fish. Your fish are your run rate ones that form probably 60, 70% of your order book. And they will be the smaller to medium size that are just the run of the mill prospects that you're comfortable dealing with. You've got a really good handle on the sales process. You've got a really good handle on the stakeholders that you're dealing with. And the fish can be any size, but it's just where you feel really comfortable and you operate with the majority of the time. The dolphins will probably be the type of companies where the most clients, most companies will have them, and it'll be where around 20 to 30% of their revenue will probably come from 4 or 5 dolphins. They'll be the nice house account. And then you have the whales, which are the real big, like you've made your quarter if you sell them one of those off. The vast majority of your time should be spent going after the dolphins and the fish. Whales should be in your pipeline, and you should aspire to them and have an eye on them, but you shouldn't be pivoting to rely on those, because the sales cycles are going to be much longer. Your close rates are going to be lower because you're not as experienced and you don't know how to articulate. And it gets a lot more political as you get enterprise level in IT, as the big players sometimes will kind of sweep it up. So have an eye on that and make sure that you're constantly aspiring to increase the size of the customer base and upskill as your business grows. But the majority of your prospect base should be in those dolphins, those ideal clients. Everyone's got them, where the majority of the revenue comes from a select number. They tend to be the easiest to deal with, and you tend to feel confident when you're speaking to them because you're doing a good job with the other companies that are similar in size. So your chance of winning the business is higher, and the potential revenue that you get from those clients is also high. And that's the magic. That's the Gartner top right. That's where you want it to be. Potential revenue and a ability to win the deal.
Yeah, and as entrepreneurs, we all, I think, fight chasing the shiny object, and a lot of times, if we have, to your point, a good core of dolphin clients, in our firm, and we think, oh man, this would be a lot better if I could just go up, upstream to the enterprise level and get these, deals that would be, 3 and 4x the size of my current, dolphin clients. But understanding a couple of things in there. One, the sales cycle extends much further, right, which puts a constraint on cash flow. And two, the bigger thing is, if you're having success with dolphins, then stick with
Double
dolphins.
down.
I think you can still go after whales, but put your time. There's two things we have a limited amount of, time and money, and put them where you're having great success. And if you're having great success with dolphins, then let's put a structure in place and a system in place to help you leverage your most valuable assets, which in a lot of cases it's the founder, right? And put in a system that we can give you more opportunities to exponentially grow your firm via dolphins, right?
Yeah, it's about maximize the chances of success. So if you think about, if you're fishing in the same pond, sorry to stretch the analogy, if you're fishing in the same pond as other people, then your chances are always going to be diminished by certain things. So if you're fishing in a pond and targeting a certain client, and your competition is likely to have a more abundant selection of case studies or customer success, that's going to put you at a disadvantage. even if you're an amazing salesperson and you've absolutely nailed like multi-stakeholder sales cycles, you understand what procurement are looking for, it's well qualified. If you come up against someone where they have 15 case studies in that industry you're targeting, it's always going to be easier and lower risk for the client, which is when you're talking about IT, risk comes into it significantly. No one's going to get sacked for picking someone who's had dozens of engagements within that sector. Taking a punt on you, even though your sales cycle is really good, is always going to be a risk for them. That's why they say like no one gets sacked for buying Cisco, like because it's such a well trusted, which is why, because of the perceived likelihood of success. So stick to where you've got documented proof, where you've got customer success, and then grow organically as your business grows, you get more resource, your fulfillment becomes better and more evolved, and then automatically you'll be able to climb up the food chain gradually. But don't pivot and just suddenly go after bigger businesses. That's speaking from experience, because we tried that and it failed miserably. So
yeah, and I think any entrepreneur and any founder has done the same, right? We all get shiny object syndrome at times, and what I mean by that is like, hey, wouldn't it be great? Or that's almost like the grass is greener type of thing, right? And a lot of times, if you can just put in the process that works, that's already working, that you already finding success. And this is kind of my next question for you. You talked about the case studies and the success stories, and how important is that in leveraging those in order to go out to a cold market, to find new prospects to put in your funnel? How imperative is that you have those, and what's involved in creating those kind of assets?
So I think it's probably easier to talk about what bad case studies or bad customer success looks like.
Okay.
And it's probably it's the most prevalent uses of bad marketing that I've ever seen. Like, and it'll be a bad case study, which will be a quote on a website or a logo, and it'll just be an absolute soundbite of someone saying, "Yeah, they did a good job for us for once." And every website's got them, but it doesn't mean so. Every website's got them, so it doesn't have any value to prospects because it's an expectation that they should be on that website, but yet everyone still does it. So it doesn't do anything to increase the perceived likelihood of success. You'd be much, much better, and I know you're a big advocate for this as well, of just having 4 or 5, even 1 in the absence of anything, quality case study, which is video, and it is a customer talking through the transformation that you delivered for them. And it's so important because in IT, you are always dealing with like risk. It's really high profile, and IT buyers and people who buy IT or are involved in it have to be risk averse by nature. So you have to be able to build the perceived likelihood of success. And you do that by speaking to customers where you've done a really good job and getting them to speak about it at length in their own language, almost like in a podcast format like this is brilliant for talking, so that it gives the people who are interested in that the opportunity to resonate with it and build trust in what you're able to deliver. So one case study, long form, and talking about a transformation in detail, in their own language, unfiltered, is ultimately 10, 15, 20 times more effective than a soundbite of 10 other case studies that are on a website. And then you use that not just passively on a website, you go out to people that look like your case study, tap them on the shoulder and say, look, we've done a really good job for these guys. They look quite similar to you for the outside, but I don't know. Do you mind if I send it over? And you're just opening that conversation. So absolutely, and I know you've got the same views on this, and
of course,
seeing how powerful they can be.
You know, and the reason I'm smiling is, you know, I think it's just a challenge for some of the, you know, these folks that have built their businesses on, you know, warm leads, networking, referrals, word of mouth, right? To be able to understand that mindset shift, and it's difficult. It is completely difficult. to change your mindset to be able to say, hey, when you go out to a cold market, they don't know you from Adam, they haven't been referred to you, right? But you can cut through the noise. There is a lot of noise out there. We all get plenty of emails that come in our inbox. We're barraged more, from both social media and external sources from plenty of things. But it's the ability to cut through the noise. If you can package a case study where you've been successful, then go out to the market and target prospects that look a lot like your client. It will absolutely cut through like a hot knife through butter. And that's kind of where it's so important to understand how you can go out to a marketplace from an outreach standpoint and see success. Ultimately, we're all people. People are people. People do business with people. And essentially, if you can, show them that there's value in getting into a conversation with you, right? They're going to do it. I've seen
Yeah.
it. I've seen it in our own business. I've seen it with some of our clients that we've employed the same, type of systems. It's, I want to say it's not hard. It's not, it's difficult, but everyone can get there. Would you agree? As long as you have happy clients, satisfied clients, that you can you can grow your firms, you can grow your businesses with this kind of methodology.
Yeah, you just look at it as if you can deliver good results to one person who's willing to talk about how good you are, you can replicate that. It's not going to be an anomaly. You can replicate that. And when you get another one, you do that, and then it increases the perceived likelihood of success. And I think people underestimate the power of that. We had a client recently. They signed 2 deals in December, enterprise logistics SaaS. They signed 2 deals. The only reason they won it over a competitor was they said they had 2 case studies which advocated the quality of their support long term. Because if someone's moving, and this is the same with IT, a lot of the time people have got incumbents and they might not be entirely happy with them, but they're thinking the last thing they want to do is make that shift and then go from the frying pan into the fire. Because as an IT buyer, you're either getting crap from above when something in the network doesn't go down or you're exposed like security wise, or you're getting crap from below, which is from your users who are complaining that the support isn't working or something like that. So you're in a lose-lose situation when things don't go right in IT. So the absolute worst thing for someone to happen is to jump from the frying pan into the fire. If you've got people who are willing to advocate for you and speak volumes about the support you offer long term and what you've delivered from a transformation and why it's best not to stick with that person that you're not really happy with and you think there probably are better options out there, but you don't want to go through the time, effort and investment to end up with something that you're not happy with either. It's unspeakable in the amount of value that it brings when you're looking to start that outbound function.
Well, I like to give everyone some piece of actionable, advice. I think this is a good segue to the end here because I've had you on for almost an hour, which I could talk to you forever. I think your value proposition is just so amazing. So let's do this. In terms of something actionable that someone who's watching this, today can take away. If you were to say, hey, here's one way you can go out, take one of your client success stories, right, and go out to the market. What would be an easy way to do that, right? Is it just to call up one of your, 2 or 3 or better clients that you've had really good success with and say, hey, would you mind getting on a Zoom call that we can record and let's just kind of talk about it? Where you were when you started, where were you trying to go? What challenges are you trying to overcome? Because I think that's something where, if someone leaves today and says, oh, I could do that. I could call up, XYZ client that I have and they'll get on a Zoom call with me. And in 1 hour, we could probably knock out, this potential asset that we could leverage to start going out to the marketplace tomorrow. Is that what would you say?
Yeah. So I would go, I'm going to take it a little bit step back first and say the first thing is, Take a bird's eye view of that process. A lot of founders don't think they've got a sales process. They probably have. write down at a high level the sales process and what should be happening at each stage, or what you think each stage of that sales process happens. And then write down the problems that you feel your top clients, the reasons that they bought from you as opposed to other people, and what they value about the service. Because the reason you do this first is because you want to be able to tailor the questions in the case study to directly speak to other people who have those similar problems. So you'll be able to confirm this when you speak to them, but you should have a good idea of why they value you, or what they buy from you. If not, you need to correct that ASAP. So write down, map out what you think should be happening at each stage, get a few questions evolved around the problems that you solve, and then very much so, just get on a Zoom call. Like, this is like Riverside, really good quality, except when you stand on the plug, but decent quality. And just tailor the questions. So it should be, what was the customer doing before they did it? So what was life with the incumbent? Why were they looking to change? What prompted them, or what event prompted them to change? Why they chose you, why they chose to go with you as opposed to stay with the incumbent or stay with the status quo. Insanely valuable with sales when the status quo is the enemy often. And then what it meant and what the wider implications were of this new desired current state where they moved to you and they experienced better outcomes on the back of it. Try and schedule like 45 minutes to an hour. You'll take the best bits or the sound bites to put into a case study, which will be external facing. And then you've also got the internal long form, where anyone coming into your organization can get a really good feel. Like, it's amazing for SDRs or salespeople coming into organizations if they can hear clients talking at length about the service that you deliver. So keep the long form for training, short form, which is then used to form your outreach. And then the next step is, once you've got that case study, you look for clients that are similar in size, structure, industry to the clients that have done the case studies. And you just use the case study to open a conversation. And it's very, very basic. It's just, hey, notice you're pretty similar to these guys. We've just recorded a video or a podcast about how we took them from X state to Y after they were having issues with their incumbent. Any objections if I send it across? And just use that like the case study to open that conversation. Once you've done that, it should be, like I say, the door's open, and it should be plain sailing. All you need to then look at is how you can scale that effectively, especially if you've got a large target market where you can do that at scale to various people.
Yeah. And we always like to talk to our clients and prospects and tell them, all our job is working with you is to keep pushing down the next constraint, right? And a lot of them just say, Terrence, I just want to have more, conversations with our target prospects, right? And then I say, trust me, there'll be another constraint after that. But again, it's more important just to get past that next constraint and then kind of address them like a series of dominoes, right? Just keep pushing them over until there's none
Definitely,
left.
like unlocking. Although another thing that we hear time and time again from customers is people always default to the lowest common denominator. And it's like you're saying about the dashboards, you have to know what success looks like at each stage of your process, because a lot of founders will say, we just need more leads, but their close rate will be 7%. You do not need leads. Asking for more leads is like having a bucket with two massive holes in it and just asking for more water, because it doesn't matter how much water you put in, you're never going to be able to like use that bucket effectively. Don't put water in a leaky bucket. Make sure that you know what the process looks like, that you've refined it, you know what should be happening at each stage, what good looks like. Then once you know that you've got your bucket with no holes in it, then you can turn on the taps and say, yeah, let's go and get more leads.
Yeah. Well, listen, as I said, I could talk with you for hours upon hours, but talking about opening conversations, where can people find you to open up a conversation, how you might be able to help them?
So I'm generally going to be on LinkedIn. So it's just, I'll post, in fact, I'll find, you can edit this out so it looks seamless. I'll find my LinkedIn
Okay.
profile. Two six. Okay, so they can find me on LinkedIn, and it's just / Joe Milnes TDSC. So Joe Milnes TDSC, and or if you go to the direct sales company, then on LinkedIn you'll be able to find us through there.
I think I've seen you on Twitter as well. I think I've seen you posting there.
I haven't been on Twitter for a long time. So this is we went through a stage of, and this is a lesson in growing and marketing. I was spending a lot of time doing tweets, building up a brand on Twitter, and I was doing that for about 6 months before realizing that none of our target market were on Twitter. They were all on LinkedIn. So it's about finding out where your prospects are before you put energy into trying to tweet to them.
And just to that point, Joe, I think this would be a good way to wrap up. We probably don't like to pat ourselves on the back and call ourselves sales and marketing experts, but by default, because we probably know more than most people out there because they're focused on their core business, we in fact do. But a lot of times we don't know either. Like we don't. If I had a magic, bullet from my bag or a magic trick I could pull out and just, cure all the sales and marketing ills and just fill your pipeline tomorrow, trust me, I would love that. But it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
right? A lot of what we do is testing different things to see what works, right? There are fundamentals that we follow, but a lot of it's just testing things to see what works. And I like to liken it to, a successful baseball player here in the United States, right? And the professionals in MLB is, if they, can bat, 350, 35%, they're going to go to the Hall of Fame, right? And I think in a lot of ways, that's the same with regards to sales and marketing. It's especially with cold outreach and pulling it through. Your expectations need to be built around, hey, I don't need to be 100% successful. I just need to find a couple of winning campaigns, a couple of winning methods, and my salespeople need to be able to pull through, 20 to 30%. And trust me, you will be able to grow your business, 20 to 30% year over year, without fail. So
Absolutely. And it can seem daunting at first, but we've got a way of building a sales process for an organization. Once you do it once as a founder, you could then scale that to 150 strong sales force. We've seen sales forces 50 plus use the same process, and because of the framework that we use and the training and the tools that you get, the experience for the reps stay the same. And it goes back to that visibility. Because you've got visibility of what should be happening at each stage, it makes management really easy because you're not allowing it to become subjective. You're taking an objective view of what should be happening across every part of your sales process. Makes it very easy to spot where your leaks are in your bucket and plug them.
Well, we're gonna wrap it this, and I can tell you that we're gonna do, especially because your prospects are on LinkedIn. We're gonna do a LinkedIn live event coming up. I guarantee you we'll have a lot of questions that will be coming in, and it would be great to do this type of format live. So, but I greatly appreciate your time today, and look forward to catching up in the future. Thanks, buddy.
Awesome. Cheers, Terrence. Speak to you later.
Thanks.